just going to ask you directly. I was wondering the different file storage systems. You mentioned Filecoin and you mentioned IPFS.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any, I've heard some criticisms of putting NFTs on IPFS, and I'm just wondering, are there some advantages with Filecoin? Or, I mean, Arweave is another option with their permanent storage solution. Can you just talk a little bit about maybe the pluses and minuses of having your NFT off-chain?
Yeah, totally. I feel like the Filecoin piece is what we're trying to address those criticisms. Basically, I feel like the criticism that I was most aware of when a few months ago was that IPFS doesn't provide the persistence story on its own. So you put like adding data to IPFS is great in the here and now, but unless somebody's committed to like keeping that data online, there's kind of a gap in that story. So with NFT storage, we're like using Filecoin to fill that gap and sort of make it, like in a computer file system, you need a hard drive to put it on. And so we're saying a Filecoin is the hard drive that is going to ensure that this data is sticking around for the long term. So you can basically build an NFT.storage yourself if you want. We think that right now it's probably easier for people to just use the one that we're running. And then we're going to take care of all the glue. I don't know, about Arweave, I think they're pretty cool. I like Arweave. But I think it's kind of, it sort of depends on what for me, like the reason that I would choose IPFS, I guess, is because mostly because I think that the content addressing factor is an important one, in the sense that if you have your IPFS CID, even if that's actually the data is stored on Arweave, but if you do that and also have a CID in there, I think that's great, because then like later, you have that independence and flexibility of where the data comes from in the future, like, which I think for me is kind of compelling, because you have, we've structured this NFT storage thing so that IPFS is like the retrieval protocol that you're always going to use, and you never have to really care that Filecoin is in the mix, because then I feel like, since Filecoin is relatively new, maybe you don't necessarily want to trust it long term. That's fine, because you can combine that with another storage strategy, like you could pin it yourself on a cluster or contract it out, or you could sort of pin it to Arweave, if that makes sense for you economically and so on.
So we've had a lot of questions throughout the day, yesterday and today, on the ability to copy, and concerns really about the ability to copy NFT content. Even if it doesn't have that signature on the blockchain, it's not that difficult to find something on an interplanetary file system and to make a copy of it. Even if it's not the authentic one, you would have just as good a copy in some views. Do you have any answer to that? Do you think that the industry is going towards some kind of better security for such content?
I don't really have an answer that's satisfying, I think. I'm sure the industry will explore that, because I feel like there's always people that want control over content, in the sense of like access control, right? I think so far the enthusiasm for NFTs has been largely around public NFTs, which are the ones that we're like most like ideologically aligned with at Protocol Labs, because I think we have a big like public data, fire in our belly or something. But I do think, IPFS can be used to construct a system in which you share private data using encryption and so on. But at this point, I don't know, we're in a position where we're trying to sort of build really flexible systems for everybody, and have not yet staked a viewpoint that like, this is exactly how you should encrypt your data if you want it to be like private or inaccessible only to certain people. So I'm interested in that, and kind of like working on that story for us. I think it's just, though, and this is purely my own opinion, but that I kind of feel like the popularity of NFTs in some ways speaks to everybody's frustration with DRM schemes, and how like that attempt to impose scarcity on digital content doesn't really ever work over the long term, at least in my personal view. Again, like I don't want to speak for my company here, and maybe I feel like if you look long enough, everything eventually will get cracked and disseminated, and copies will be made. So it's been kind of amazing to me to see people like willingly say, I'm gonna pay like real like magic internet money for this one unique record on the blockchain, even though everybody can get a copy for free. Because like that kind of speaks to me of like people's desire to own things regardless of like scarcity, you know. Like that concept of ownership itself is like actually important, even if the copies are super accessible. So I think that there's going to be a desire for both, and that I'm technically interested in whatever anybody comes up with for access control, because I think it is a super important problem. And over medium terms, I think you can definitely make strong guarantees about that if people can manage keys well, which tends to be one of the areas where like consumer facing things kind of fall apart. Like people aren't that great at keeping digital secrets, you know. So
right.
but I know
we had a panel yesterday about UX, user design, and a long discussion about how people just lose their keys. They need better systems. No one wants to be responsible for that. Do you really consider, I mean, there's scarcity, you mentioned scarcity. There is scarcity of authentic items. Just like, I mean, there's knockoffs of all of the major brands, right? But someone who has an authentic Prada bag has something that is worth a little bit more, or a lot more, than a knockoff. Do you see it being the same? Because digitally they're identical, the two items. One of them just has that signature. Do you think that creates that scarcity mindset?
I don't know. I think it's kind of a philosophical question. Like, it's the sort of like, if I have an antique revolver and a replica of an antique revolver, and they're identical in every observable way, and then I turn my back and somebody shuffles them back and forth, which one is the valuable one? You know, like that sense of value, I think, is ephemeral and like exists in our mind. So to that sense, it's very flexible. And I think that people are willing to sort of put their mind in a place where they can say, okay, this record on the blockchain is valuable. And everybody's going to be like, sure, that's the official one. I think in the art NFT world, that seems to be because like the identity of the creator is verifiable, and they've gone and like put that message out there, like, I made this specific NFT, it's the real one. And I think like on the blockchain itself, you don't really have that kind of identity layer. So that tends to really happen with like a platform or marketplace saying like, this person is for real, this is, you know, they're legit, and then everybody trusts that. And now there's something about that where it feels like blessed in a way by the original creator. Yeah. And that's worth paying for, I guess, or worth like, you know, you form some kind of attachment to that.
Well, thank you for taking us through the creation of an NFT and demystifying that. Really appreciate that. And as a last question, how can people find you online? So
I do have a Twitter, which I will check very occasionally. It's at Sefnap, SEFNAP. And then I'm a little better at responding to email if you want to reach me at yusef@protocol.ai. And otherwise, I tend to pop up on every now and again, talk about NFTs in various forums. So you might see me at hackathons and things like that. If you like, this week especially, I'll be hanging out on the IPFS Discord. And there'll be a bunch of protocol labbers all there talking about labby things. So.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing your expertise. We're going to move on to the next panel now.
Thanks so much.